we know that what we will talk about today is just the beginning of an understanding that we will discuss more with you as you accept little tidbits of it, or as you are receptive to what we'll give you today. It's hard to talk about the subject we're going to talk about today without sounding like awareness vocabulary. You know what I mean by awareness vocabulary, or psychic, or vocabulary, or psychiatric vocabulary, psychology, because we only have words to use to discuss it with you. We might do better if we put you to sleep here, and then if we mentally spoke to your mind, then you might accept it, but we unfortunately, or you are forced to bring this into your conscious mind. Part of your task is to bring this understanding into your conscious mind. You, more than anybody else on this planet, in fact, you're the only ones on this planet, part of your task is that you have to know totally, as closely as you're capable of knowing, and as closely as we're capable of understanding to give to you. You have to put your whole self into function. And so we'll talk a little bit more about what the whole self is. And even using that word, the words whole self, I don't like the ring of that, because that sounds like things you read in books too. But we have nothing else but words to use, so here we go. Well, we talked about how humans are pretty much plants that work on a programming basis of their computers, mainly genetic programming. And we even began to say that in a sense that is a mind, but we didn't want you to confuse that with next level mind. So maybe it would help if we think of human vehicles as having two minds and one pocket, which would be two minds and a pocket for a third mind. And that the two minds would be the best terminology that we could use would be the conscious mind and the inner mind, or the subconscious mind. And that inner mind or subconscious mind is the same thing as we have talked to you about as the programmed genetic mind. But the least significant mind, in a sense, that humans have is the conscious mind, because it vacillates so, and it causes them so much trouble. And it's just a sieve for negativity, even though it can be a very useful tool in programming the inner mind, or the subconscious mind. Well, for sake of just not having to say so many terms, for a while we'll call it the inner mind, okay? Even though we don't place any importance upon that label. But we'll call it the inner mind. Let's say that the inner mind is the mind that constructed your vehicle from a single cell to what it now is. And it was programmed to do that. And it also keeps your heart beating, keeps the blood circulating, keeps all the functions, elimination, everything else happening in the body that you take for granted, even though it does not do it automatically. It is programmed, in a sense, to do it consciously, even though it does not go through the brain so that it comes into your conscious mind. But the inner mind, in a sense, consciously keeps the heart pumping, and everything else happening with the vehicle that must happen. It's like a computer that has been programmed to keep all of those functions going. Now, if the tapes begin to deteriorate because of age, or if the programming of the inner mind has accepted the programming that those tapes will begin to deteriorate at such and such a time, then as those tapes begin to deteriorate, then it functions more poorly in keeping those vital functions of the vehicle going. Now, the inner mind cannot make any judgments, cannot make any decisions, cannot reason, but it does all those other things. Now, the conscious mind that can make judgments and can make decisions and can reason can also program the inner mind. And you keep the inner mind confused because you will tell it something and then you'll tell it isn't so. In other words, as your conscious mind, if you, for a period, let's say we tell you that something is true in a meeting, and for that moment you accept it and you believe it. If the belief was strong, there was a bit of an automatic transference of that information to the inner mind. In other words, for the moment of your belief, there was a bit of automatic transference to the inner mind. But if you go off and your booger, our lower forces, cause doubt and question to come in, that also enters the inner mind. And the inner mind then that started believing something and putting something into action, then starts stopping that action because you're also programming it that it isn't so. Do you understand this so far? Now, we'll stop talking about that for a minute and talk about how your next level mind, your kingdom of heaven mind, occupied the pocket. And since your inner mind wasn't programmed, well, let's take your teachers, for example. This would be a better way to understand this. Your teacher's next level mind had to bypass the inner mind and to come into the conscious mind, and in a sense, the inner mind began to cause trouble as a ciphering device, because the inner mind is programmed to keep everything in order. It also, even though you're not aware of it, it also keeps your brain functioning at a certain level and permits a control of vocabulary and pronunciation and a level of understanding. Now, when the next level minds came into the presence of these vehicles and tried to put into the conscious mind next level understanding, the conscious mind wasn't equipped. And in a sense, the inner mind began to falter, or cause it to falter. It wasn't really causing it to falter, but the vehicle wasn't programmed to accept, the brain wasn't programmed to accept that level of understanding, that type of vocabulary, that type of reasoning, that type of function. Therefore, it's, in a sense, our next level mind bypassed the inner mind into the conscious mind, and performs very clumsily in the conscious mind, because we still have to go through the brain that in order to get out words, and the brain has been very limited by its programming and structure coming from the inner mind, has been very limited and doesn't know how to function at that level of understanding. So we become clumsy with words and clumsy with pronunciation and clumsy in getting thoughts out and all, because it's short-circuiting to a degree because it doesn't know how to do it. Now, we believe that as we understand it, the inner mind has a capacity to be much greater than the inner mind is in the average human, even though, let's say, a very healthy human. But don't forget, let's backtrack, that the inner mind is primarily a live mind giving orders, functioning at the way it has been programmed. So don't forget that all of that programming is set up at a human programming. That programming was passed down to it from generations past, plus that programming, it has received additional programming from the experiences of the conscious mind of the vehicle during that particular lifetime. Now, the major part of its computer is loaded with information that it received genetically. And then in addition to that, it has received a little bit of what the conscious mind has fed it. But it becomes very confused with that because the conscious mind is so fickle. Because the conscious mind will believe one thing one day and disbelieve it the next, because the conscious mind is the biggest vehicle of the lower forces. That's where the lower forces your booger and the servants of Lucifer can work is mainly on your conscious mind. Now, what we want to help you do is realize how to use the inner mind, how to consciously use it. There are several ways you can use it. One is to just put the conscious mind to sleep and program the inner mind. But then you're not bringing that information into the conscious mind. You're not forcing the conscious mind to also perform at the level of the inner mind. Now, let's say we wanted to work you wanted to work on your body. If you got in a very meditative state, you could talk to your inner mind and work on your body. And because the inner mind can do unbelievable things, but your conscious mind has to believe it if you're going to give the commands through your conscious mind. Your conscious mind has to thoroughly believe it or you can't give the commands. But if we put your conscious mind to sleep, your inner mind will accept whatever other believing mind will feed into it. So let's say that if we got a tape of somebody who knew how to use the inner mind to heal your body, we put your conscious mind to sleep, then your body accepts the healing because you weren't blocking it. But the minute we tell you what happened and you begin to doubt it, then you begin to program into your inner mind, I don't think that's going to work, it's a bunch of baloney, and so forth. And so it works against what has been done in programming. Now, but one thing we can do is play some tricks on the inner mind by programming the inner mind to ignore any negativity that passes through your brain. And now you have to mean it and you have to repeatedly program it. Nothing works as good as far as the conscious mind programming the inner mind as repetition. As far as the conscious mind programming the inner mind, nothing works as good as repetition. So if you consciously tell your inner mind that, because there's no way you are going to avoid negativity fighting at you as long as you're in this atmosphere. But you, knowing that negativity is going to fight at you, you are trying to even consciously block it as fast as you can. But now you're also going to tell the inner mind to start shutting off valves in your brain and blocking and not accepting. In other words, you're going to say, I'm a liar if I say anything that's negative. Don't believe me. Don't accept it. Now, the funny thing is, if you really believe that when you say it, then you will also transmit that idea to the inner mind when negative thoughts enter. And in a sense, you will block it yourself. You will block the inner mind from accepting that negativity. Do you follow what? Do you all understand what we're saying so far? Now, we've got to, we feel like the inner mind we haven't even fooled with. We have made you work against the odds of using the inner mind. Now you're going to even go in, you're going to be aware of your inner mind, you're going to go into the inner mind, and you're going to say, you have been programmed to play certain tapes that were perfectly okay for all humans' vehicles to play, because you were even programmed to believe that it was healthy to perform all of those tapes, to keep the sensuous activity of the vehicle alive, to let the vehicle accept responses such as hostility, anger, irritability, intolerance, impatience, and so forth. You've all believed that you have accepted that those are all normal functions of the human level of existence. And now I'm going to program you to erase those tapes. And we're going to put in their place next level programming. The importance of instructions, the importance of foresight, the importance of check partners, the importance of not listening to any negativity, of acting quickly and not being wasteful with time and energy. Everything that you can think of that we have taught you as next level thinking and activity, you're going to program the inner mind to accept, because the inner mind can then perform a function to assist you as an alarm clock, with foresight or with instruction. You've depended upon this conscious mind to be your alarm clock and to keep you on the track, and the conscious mind is a lousy tool as far as a reminder and keeping you ahead with foresight. The computer, the inner mind, is an excellent tool. It knows how to make that heartbeat in perfect repetition, and it doesn't forget it. It keeps it going. It doesn't forget what the elimination must do, what every other function of the vehicle does. It keeps it going. And you're going to program it to keep you going on next level type conduct. And you're going to stop the programming of the automatic inner mind on human type conduct and procedures. In other words, the inner mind stays mostly preoccupied with the physical nature of the vehicle, but it stays preoccupied with trying to keep what it has been programmed to believe is the natural physical nature of the vehicle, plus what you have consciously programmed it in the past to believe was the proper conduct. If you programmed it for its eyes to follow a vehicle of the opposite sex, and you programmed it for so long to do that, it does it just as automatically as keeping the heartbeat. So how can you blame it? You can't. It's not always a booger doing it. It's the vehicle doing it because you programmed it to do it. And your daddy programmed it, and his daddy programmed it, and so forth on down the line. And you have to consciously figure out what is all the programming that is in there that is unlike next level programming, that is human programming only, and go in there and erase those tapes and override them with new tapes. And you will have to do that repeatedly. Now, the only way you can get into your inner mind is to be in a very quiet, meditative state, free from distraction, or at least have built around yourself enough shell as to not be affected by distraction when you're working on your inner mind. And not let reason come into your brain during the process of talking to the inner mind. If you let reason come into the brain, you will open the door for question, analysis, doubt, and so forth. You want to simply give it instructions. In other words, you can sit down with your piece of paper and you can make a list of the things that are in it, that you know are programmed in it, that are normal human programming, that you're going to start unprogramming. And you can make a list of the things that are normal next level procedures that we have given to you that are not programmed, that you have been only dependent upon your conscious mind to follow through on. Do you want to turn that light on, Vibhuti? And then when you're in the process of talking to the inner mind, you don't want to think about. You want to have done that before while you were sitting down making your lists. You don't want to think about whether or not this is right or wrong, or listen to any questioning or any doubt. You're merely giving commands to the inner mind, and you have to believe it. If you don't believe it, it's like if we tell you the importance of instructions, and you actually don't believe the value of them. You think that T and Do have come up with games of instructions in order to keep you occupied. If you don't really see their value in the next level, then your computer is not accepting them in a clear-cut way so that he can remind you. Now, knowing that you have this computer that can accept those commands gives you better control of the keyboard in entering those programs than if you were just unaware that the inner mind was accepting that programming. In other words, knowing that you have an inner mind that can perform these functions and that you can feed it gives you better control of the keyboard so you don't miss so many letters and mess the program up. Because you mess nearly every program up when you're just accepting things that we give to you in your conscious mind. Because nearly every thought we give to you in your conscious mind is accompanied by some little other interference of questioning or distraction or something else, and you miss a key. And pretty soon you've missed so many keys that you didn't even get it in. And so the program is garbled. Are we making sense to you?
In other words, if you will accept, I have felt right along that you all didn't accept the procedures that we gave to you thoroughly enough.
But you tried to,
and you go through the motion, but you don't really accept them.
Accept them, like T's talking about, means that you recognize the value of them without question, and you don't even listen to arguments in opposition to them. But you just take it as fact. If we say you must learn this instruction, that's all there is to it.
You dilute it with your own thoughts. You listen to us, and you probably halfway believe it. But then you add your own interpretation or your own way of thinking to it, so much so that it's diluted and you only do a part of the instruction. But what Doe is saying to you is that you have got to forget about the conscious mind and program into your computer the total program of the next level procedures.
It doesn't have it. It hasn't been in there.
It has to be typed in totally without any of your little conscious mind coming in. And the only way you can do it is to put your conscious mind asleep. The conscious mind won't interfere if it doesn't know what you're doing. And believe it or
If
not,
you don't bring reason in or
right,
question in.
if you don't think consciously, your conscious mind doesn't know what's going on. And you can bypass the conscious mind by going to the computer or the inner mind and programming it. And as soon as the inner mind believes it, then it will begin to function in that way. And then the conscious mind just picks up on it.
Yes, the conscious mind then becomes a wonderful expression of the inner mind, because you've clearly programmed it. Now, the inner mind, even though it is a thing of the vehicle itself, it also has the potential of bringing your next level mind into total being. In other words, it's like the reverse of Adam's fall. It has the potential for it, even though the only programming it has in it is fall, because it has only human programming in it, right? Do you understand? We're talking too much shorthand? Okay, what we have taught you in Next Level Mind, if clearly without interruption or doubt or question, if it is clearly programmed into the inner mind and takes the place of what is presently still there of human programming, the potential of that inner mind, what we're calling the inner mind, is unlimited. Just literally unlimited. We can even see why the next level would send you into such a vehicle that has such a capacity. But it has that capacity only for you, because you're the only one that can put that information into it, with the help of your teachers and the help of the next level. Can you understand that?
Next level.
Yes, you can feed the next level instructions and the next level ways, the next level mind into it, and it even has the capacity now to turn around and even help you with the discipline of your conscious mind. It's not going to do it 100%. Your conscious mind will always be battled with the forces of this planet, but it can assist you in slamming the door, because you can program it so to help you slam the door. It's like saying to your inner mind, when that thought reaches my brain, I want you to help me slam the door immediately. I want you to help me recognize it immediately as what it is, and see it for nothing but negative thoughts that I have no room for, no place for. They cannot serve me. They are only of this planet and the minds of this planet. They are not next level. And you do that repeatedly, it will even see that program comes back to your conscious mind every time a negative thought would attack your conscious mind. And you would have 10 times the ammunition that you now have for fighting off any destructive thoughts.
If your heart is beating right now, which we feel like it is, and if you're breathing, if you're putting air in and out of your lungs, and you're breathing, which we feel like you're all doing, you kind of look pretty good, then your inner mind can do this. But you do have to program it. And I do not believe that it will take more than a few days to do it.
To get it started. We've got lots of programming to go in there that we're not even touching on. So, but we have to get it started. And you have to know, you have to want to do it. And you have to do it in a very organized way. And the organized way is just like we said, if T agrees, you go down and you write yourself a little list, trying to figure out the programming that is there, that is unlike next level ways, and the programming that is like next level ways, and you go, and then the next time you meditate and you get in that very quiet state, then you very methodically and repetitiously feed that into that inner mind, without distraction, without question, without doubt. You just feed it as if you're reading a news report paper And it is fact that you are reading, and here it is. The weather is going to be 63 degrees tomorrow as a high, and you believe that it's right. It has to be just methodical programming, and you do it just as if you were playing somebody else's tape. You do it repeatedly and with no interference, no question, no doubt. Now, does that sound okay that they go and write such things down? And then in your meditation, you go through this process. Now, if you are in question, if you get twisted, which I'm sure your conscious minds will try to twist you up, and you'll find kinks. And if you get kinks, then let us help you with those kinks so that you won't have interference coming in there, or you won't be programming something that isn't right.
The most important thing I believe that Doe agrees that you work on is convincing or telling your inner mind the importance of procedure and following them to the letter, and not allowing your conscious mind to change those procedures. Because I don't believe a single one of you know the full extent or how really important the procedures are. You probably think, well, it's just the way we're teaching you or something, but the procedures are more important than you can even imagine. Now, it doesn't mean how you prepare the chicken or the potatoes or something like that, but it's the method of how you prepare those particular things. The process that you go through in doing it, because once the procedures are ingrained in you, then you will automatically be programmed for more things from the next level. In other words, you will be beyond. Remember how we said, once you stop the tapes, the negative tapes that play, or the tapes of the past, the old tapes that you always have go in your mind, just a little thought can open up a whole new tape or start a tape to running. And we said you've got to stop thinking about those tapes. You have to stop allowing those tapes to play before you can begin to let more of the next level mind come in. And this, in a sense, was the beginning of what Doe was telling you today. But it wasn't working as well as this method of programming. In other words, we were trying to bypass the computer. And the ones of you who work with computers know that the only way for that computer to get any information is for you to put it into it. And for you to be able to, and you put into it what you want to put into it.
It has to be accurate. You have to put into it accurately. And you can't put into it one thing and then turn around and put it into it. I question that.
If you add something and say, or it could be this way, or it could be this way, then would the computer be able to come up with an answer? I don't know.
If you haven't made it firm, if you haven't made it...
In other words, if we give you a procedure on how to do something, and we say to go and program your inner mind with this procedure. Now, but let's say you go and you have the procedure in your mind, and you sit in on a piece of paper, and you sit in a quiet place, and you get yourself in a very relaxed, meditative state. You put your conscious mind to sleep, so to speak. Doesn't mean you go to sleep, but I mean you play like you're going to go to sleep, so the conscious mind will go to sleep, and it won't interfere, because that's the only way you can bypass the conscious mind. You have to make it think that you're going to relax and not think about it. And it's not very smart. You can fool it that way, I believe.
You're right.
Now,
It's smart in that what it has been clearly programmed, it knows exactly how to do.
right, but once it wants to, once you tell it that you're going to relax, it will relax. And then you can reach your inner mind. Now, let's say you take that procedure that you have, and we give it to you very in just a few lines. And let's say in the process you add a few little ideas of your own. Now, and by the time you finish adding the ideas of your own, it turns out to be a positive and a negative. Because invariably you will color it a little bit with your own way of thinking. Now, if you read that procedure to your inner mind or try to program it to your inner mind won't know what you're talking about. Remember, it has to be very exact in what you tell it to do. You can't say, well, sometimes this way and sometimes that way. It has to be exact. It's just like saying, well, my heart beats only when I'm running, but when I'm sitting down, you can stop beating. You see the difference? You see what I'm saying? In other words, the heart is programmed to beat all the time, and if it stops, it dies.
And you can louse it up. You can program the inner mind and louse up that heartbeat. Let me go back to what T was saying a moment ago. I think if T agrees that you, like T said, you put top priority the basic procedures so that you don't have much chance of your own mind coming in. In other words, I need a check partner on everything that I do. That's a basic procedure. That I stick to the book on procedures that I do. That I use the foresight.
I hate to say the book sometimes. Colors so
Well, but we've always given them, if they use a check partner properly and they try to stick to the procedures, the basic ones, then I think we can get the programming started. Rather than don't get into the elaborate ones where there might be a lot of question, like in secondary procedures where there might be a lot of question. The funny thing is your inner mind is capable of direct communication with our inner mind without your conscious mind knowing anything about it. It's just like the flock of geese. If the leader says, he doesn't even have to think consciously, but if he begins to turn this way, his inner mind sends a transmission to the inner minds of all those geese, and they just simultaneously, it doesn't enter their conscious mind, they just simultaneously turn as he turns. Now, a lot of you say, I can't think like T and Do think. If T and Do have worked all this time and are continuing to work constantly, programming our inner minds, and you want to do as our inner minds are doing, you can tell your inner mind, I want to do more what T and Do's inner mind is doing. I want to do, and that doesn't mean you're going to consciously try to read our minds. You're just saying to your inner mind, I want to think with foresight. I want to do like Next Level has taught me to do. I want to do as my teachers have taught me. In a sense, you can, if T agrees, you can say to your inner mind, I want you in tune with the inner mind of my teachers so that I will perform as my teachers have programmed their inner mind. Now, we're going to teach you independently to program your own inner minds, because that's part of your task, to do it. But you've got to get past believing that you cannot be in tune with our inner minds, because you can. We know that you can't. You can't, but if you reason it out in your conscious mind, you will never figure it out. It's only when you're doing it because you're following what has been fed in to the program of your inner mind. And if your inner mind is in tune with ours, you will more and more do what ours would do. Even though we're not going to let you use that to much of a degree, because we want you responsible for programming your own, the way we're teaching you, with your conscious mind. We want 3 minds in 100% function of what you are. Your conscious mind, your inner mind, your next level mind. We want that total thing functioning as one. And now they're like 3 friends who seldom even communicate. Or when they do communicate, they confuse each other. And,
we're going in different directions. One thing I want to add, I think the majority of you believe that you cannot think the way T and Doe wants you to think.
That's what I was saying.
Right. And in other words, you all have already programmed yourself to believe that you can't do everything that we ask you to do.
Oh, that's right. So your inner mind
you're
doesn't
already
sense.
programming yourself to believe that you can't do it. And now you've got to change your way of thinking, of saying, in place of ever accepting a thought like that, you have got to think, even though you make a mistake, that I can do it next time right. I am going to continue until I get everything exactly the way G and Doe had taught me to do. In other words, if you accept a negative thought, I can't do it, then you are programming your inner mind to believe that you cannot do it. And every
What's that going to do at the time you come around programming it that you can? You know,
you're going to have conflict. You're going to have a block, and you're going to have to push through and reprogram it all over again. So this old saying of never say I can't really is true. In place of having a thought of I can't do something, even though you were not able to do it at that moment, you would never let a thought of I can't do it come into your mind. It just means that you missed at that moment, but I can do it, and I'm going to do it until you do it. But if you say I can't do it over and over and over again, you can bet your bottom dollar that you will not ever do it.
That's right, because you've impressed it too much.
Can't is not part of your vocabulary. I can do this procedure right. But then the conscious mind comes in and says, no, you can't.
Because the conscious mind
well, you think you can do it right now, you know.
Conscious mind is the perfect loudspeaker of your booger.
And then you say, yes, I can do it. And then you do it and you don't do it right. And they'll come in and say, look, what happened, you know. And then your booger, your conscious mind says, yeah, don't you can't do it. And then you say, oh, yes, I can do it. I just didn't do it right this time, but next time I'm going to do it right. You've got to be very careful what you put into your program. A negative thought is very, very hard to get rid of. And if you put it in twice, that means actually it's 4 times as hard to get rid of. It almost doubles on you, triples on you, or whatever it is. And so therefore, once you allow yourself to have those thoughts, that means you've got to go through the trouble of getting rid of them.
If you put as much force behind your positive thoughts as the lower forces put behind your negative thoughts, they would stand a chance. Do you see what we're saying? Because the lower forces, your boogers, put an enormous amount of force behind doubt and negative thoughts. You know it. You feel it. And think and realize that you have to override that force. So think of the effort that it's going to take on your part to impress something that will stamp that out. That negative that has been accepted.
The best thing to say is, I can do anything.
That's right.
That my teachers tell me to do, and do it as well as anybody else could.
Funny thing is, we know you can.
We wouldn't be sitting here talking to you if we didn't know. But the thing of it is, you've got to believe it. you have been convinced by your conscious mind and the boogers that try to come in that you can't do anything right. Isn't that right? Haven't you all had that come in? And as soon as you begin to listen to that, it's true, you don't do anything right. Because according to the next level ways, you can do human things right, I'm sure. But, so therefore, the first thing you ought to put on your list is, I can do anything that my teachers have given me to do. And I am not going to listen to anything that says I can't. Now that's the most important thing in my mind.
Yes.
And if you went to, let's say that you were a child in elementary school, and every year I think they have what they call a spelling bee contest. And let's say that every year prior to the time when you were old enough to participate in it, you envied the child who won the spelling bee. But then you had a desire to win, but then you kept saying, but I'm not a very good speller, I couldn't possibly do it. Well, it's true, you would never be able to do it. But if you wanted to become the champion spelling bee or whatever speller, then you could say, if that person can do it, then I can do it. All it takes is
more now on how to program your computer, because you were so full of excessive programming. In other words, the most concise, brief, accurate programming is what works. Long, elaborate explanations of programming is confusing and will not get direct return for your money, for your effort on the functioning of your computer. You want, in other words, if you're saying that you wanted to, for example, just as an example, if you were having your computer awaken you at such and such a time, your inner mind awaken, you don't say, would you awaken me at such and such a time because I need to do this, and otherwise I'm going to do this, and and by the time you finish all that explanation, it's forgotten that it was to awaken you at such and such a time, because it wasn't a clear, concise, brief input into your inner mind. So it's very important that you be brief, direct, and concise in this effort with your inner mind. We know how accurate this is, how it works for you, and you've got to put it to work for you.
Well, how it has to work. It has to work, and it does work.
We know how it can work, and now it's got to work. You've got to.
In other words, this is your lesson for right now.
This is just a start.
Right. You've been preparing yourself for this by your mantras and your meditation, and even in a sense when you say your little mantras during the day, and when you're under stress, you will say your little jingle or something maybe. Of course, according to the reports we get, some say that, and instead you could substitute. Doesn't mean you can't say it, but you could substitute the positive way of thinking. In other words, you can say, I can do procedures according to the way that my teachers have given it to me.
I can do them exactly.
I can do them exactly. I can think the way my teachers want me to think. Now your conscious mind can come in and say, well, how can you think the way they think? In other words, if you try to figure out how to do it, then you're going to confuse your computer.
Don't ask why. That's not important. It doesn't even work.
Or try to figure it
That's
out logically.
No, it just causes interference.
Over a period of time, and I feel like within a matter of a few days, if you really exert enough effort in this direction, you will, it will begin to take hold. And you will know it because you will feel it inside of you. Now you do it mostly on the surface. But what you want to do is get inside and have it start coming from the inside out, and that is when it really takes hold. We know it works.
And we're eager to get to the next steps. So
We
get
have to
these
program our inner mind, like Joe said. We bypassed it, and now we have to work on our inner mind. And you've got to. Let's use an example. We say to you, you're going to the next level. And then a booger says, how are you going to get them there? You got a spacecraft in your garage or something, Or some kind of negative thought. No, you're not. You're not going to take them to the next level. And then, but now suppose we kept listening to that booger. And then after a while we began to think, maybe we're not going to take them to the next level. Maybe all this is just some dream or something. And then our next level mind comes in and shuts it off automatically. We don't even have to do anything. I'm saying this is what we would do. We don't do it, so don't get worried about it. But we could very easily do it. You see what I'm saying? If we had not prepared ourselves properly. You're going to the next level. There's no doubt about it. But you've got to get your vehicles in shape, in the right condition. You've got to program your computers. Melody knows the importance of programming a computer, don't you, Melody? Cerroti knows. Junodi knows. The computer is absolutely nothing without a program in it. It can just burn up electricity, and that's all. Burn up energy, right? Now, so what you have to do is consciously put your program in and stop these human programs. Actually, you've got a lot of programs that have been stopped, like the sensuality thing. You haven't used that in a long time.
Yes, but I think that if you agree that they can get a lot more success on it, knowing now of the effectiveness that their conscious mind can have if it has clean-cut orders to the inner mind, it can stop. The inner mind still at times responds to what it considered was normal physical functions of the vehicle, which it felt it was responsible for. It has accepted that it was responsible to keep those functions going. And if you will consciously and clearly and precisely say that it does not have to respond, in fact, it is not to respond, and you say it repeatedly in those human ways, it will help. Because nearly every time you've just said that to your conscious mind, it was followed up with doubt. Or you said it in such a way that it wasn't a clear typing in of an instruction. And you get more results from the assistance of this inner mind if you recognize that the inner mind is there, that it can function in this way, and you give it clear orders and directions. Then it can help you. Otherwise, it just stays in a confused position, and you battle back and forth in your conscious mind, and it doesn't know what to accept because you aren't clearly programming what to accept. You're trying to think about accepting certain programming as you mix it with doubt and wondering and the reason why and all those things to water it down. This is why we haven't given you this before, because your poor little old computer would have been so jammed with confusion if you had started programming it before having at least this much discipline in your conscious mind. Now we're hoping you have enough discipline in your conscious mind that you can program your inner mind cleanly and precisely, briefly, and accurately, so that it can service you.
Now, like Doe suggested, you can sit down and write down the negative things that you have been telling yourself lately and change it to a positive. In other words, analyze yourself very carefully and say, first on the list should be, I can do any procedure 100%, the way my teachers
Now,
have
she's
taught
not
me.
talking about programming. She's talking about it just in your conscious mind, recognizing what the negativity was and replacing it with a positive. And then as you replace it with, then you're programming that. The other you're just looking at. You're not programming. You see what we want to say? In other words, you want to program that you're not programming. Do you understand that? You want to program that you're not programming as you examine the negative.
Right, because you don't
I'm
want that
I'm merely laying it out to look at it so that I can prepare myself for programming.
You're thinking about it, but you're not going to program.
You're going to program positive.
That's
One
right.
of those negatives.
That's right. That's right. And you're
convert
going
it
to
a
program
positive.
that none of this negativity that you're examining, it is not programmable. You've got to program that it is not programmable. Otherwise, you're going to send little minor signals in there that it won't know what to do.
Well, you have to kind of do it without any strength. No, I mean, you have to say to yourself, I'm programming myself. I mean, I'm not programming
That's
myself.
right. Or you're, that's
while I'm
right.
thinking this out. And then, when you're ready to program, say, now I'm ready
Right.
to program.
In other words, as you're writing down these little things of negativity that you're examining, you're saying to yourself, this is not programmable. This is just, I'm just looking at the things that were wrong. They're not programs. And then as you see the programs, the positives, then you put effort behind them and you program them concisely and briefly, and then you have to do it repetitiously. It'll work. And don't forget, as you're doing it with repetition, you don't let the whys, the reason, the question, anything come in, or you merely become a lousy typist on your computer. Got a question? Doty's got a question.
Say, trying to figure out the best way to write a positive program on a problem area. Like, let's say this is not programmable now. Let's say you write, or one of your problems is my vehicle responds to attractive vehicles. Okay, now what is the positive program that you want to replace that with?
You say my vehicle will have no response to other vehicles at any human level or at any level that would relate to even terminology of attractiveness or feeling, or that would even relate to such things as sensuality. It wouldn't even have any attraction. Those things are programs that are obsolete for me, and programs that do not apply, programs that are going to have to be removed from my bank and be
Members
replaced.
at the next level are not attracted to vehicles. It just isn't in their program. So therefore, it would be an obsolete program. And what you do is just state what it is, that you are no longer going to respond, just like Doe said, to that kind of program.
And if you do it as a matter of fact, and you get your program in clear and precise, and you do it repeatedly, it'll take no time for it to begin to help you, so that if the lower forces come and try to get your conscious mind to respond in that way, then your computer jumps in and says, sorry.
Stops it.
and you wonder, I got some special help in nipping that in the bud. Because your inner mind has come in and you have programmed it to help you nip it in the bud. And your booger says, oh, shucks.
after a while, the vehicle will just fall right into place.
And won't even see you or have a response.
It will just go fast, only if you consciously try to do it.
Well, it doesn't mean that the booger is going to still.
The booger
Try
might
to
come
do
in
it.
and make you aware, but it will block it out immediately. Mistake or miss, you know. What does the computer say?
You've got to consider all human-type reminiscences as negatives. All human-type reminiscences, reflections of human level of thinking as negatives. That tapes that are unplayable, tapes that have to be extracted from your bank, and they're going to be replaced with alarm clocks for check partner instructions, procedures, thinking as my teachers are thinking, so that they are, so that you're going to load up that bank, and that so that that bank can assist you, because you can't go around and hold in your conscious mind the reminders of all those procedures. And that's why you're evidently, or it's obvious that your programming has been weak to this point. Now, we're going to give your programming strength by helping you understand how to use your computer. Because you've been trying to program a computer when you really didn't know what the nomenclature was. And now you know what you know a little bit about what the computer is. And you know how you can feed it, and how it has to be direct, and how it can't have elaborate terminology. It has to be clear and precise, and has to be positive. And that you're just going to feed it methodically and repetitiously. And each time you also do permit a negative thought to enter your conscious mind, you're going to recognize, for this moment, I am trying to discredit a program that I have in there. Or let's say that a negative thought comes in that you have not yet programmed the positive for. Then make a notation of that type of human type thought or negative impulse that you have not put a clear tape in for. Because if you have a clear, strong tape in there in a way that it's going to come right back at you, then it's going to help you anytime that thing would arrive at the door of your conscious mind. Do you see what we're saying? So you can use it, you can question anytime a negative thought tries to knock at your door. You might say, maybe I don't have adequate programming for this there, or I would have had more help in nipping it more quickly.
Add that to your list.
You see what we're saying? You know, this inner mind of yours is an unbelievable tool of building what we're calling you. It is more you than your conscious mind. Now, to this point, no, it is potentially more you. It isn't yet. It is potentially more you than your conscious mind. Now this sounds like spiritual talk, but it isn't. The thing that has been primarily you has been the next level mind that's filling that pocket. That is one of the things that comes with this vehicle. Its conscious mind, its inner mind, has a pocket. So your next level mind can't fill that pocket. And it filled it just enough to recognize that your teachers were around and say, I've got to go follow them. I don't know why, but I've got to go follow them. And so little by little, your next level mind has come into your conscious mind. But now at this point, your conscious mind is going to consciously feed into your inner mind an enlargement, and the machinery is in that inner mind that can serve you the most. The machinery is there, the capacity is there to make that inner mind bind and awaken both your next level mind and your conscious mind, so that the three are one. And that the three go and become what, in legend, we can imagine Adam was before he fell. even more than what Adam was before he fell. It would be more like what Adam was after he returned, after he was reinstated, after he was redeemed, after he had learned every lesson he could learn from his fall and had gained the strength to not fall again. That would be the end result of what those three would have the capacity to be. So that means some systems have to be changed over. And some systems that were dormant in there, that are blank tapes in there with the potential of becoming alive, will become alive and make you more than anything this planet has ever seen. Do you understand what we're saying? Because of what those three together can be, once that inner has completely awakened and become unhuman and accepted everything of the next level and has control of even the conscious mind. And the conscious mind, there's no difference, there's no separation, because you know what you have, you know how to use it. The inner mind is just a tool now of yours, but you've got to start functioning. You don't even know how it works. In a sense, it still performs on some of its programming. It will still make certain organs in your body fall down at age so-and-so if the genetic programming of 16 generations of that vehicle has accepted that at age so-and-so, my liver's going to fall down, or whatever it is. But it doesn't have to happen. You could even go into that inner mind and get to that liver and bring new life into it and make it totally healthy again and program that computer to keep that liver functioning forever. You have that capacity. That potential is there. But it has to be done. There's a lot ahead for you in effort in this way. That doesn't mean the departure is that much further away. And when he said to you a moment ago, we know that you're going to leave. We know that you're going to leave aboard a spacecraft, even though the forces have tried so many times to say, if it was going to happen, it would have happened before now. They've done every trick they could think of to discourage you. And you have got to, in a sense, now every negative thought of that nature that you have accepted is going to have to be just methodically erased and replaced. Anytime such a thought would come, you say, I'm leaving. I'm leaving. I'm going on a spacecraft. I'm going this lifetime, and it isn't very far from now. And I'm sorry, you shut up, because I know what I'm doing. And if you will repeatedly get that in there, the restoration of belief of that nature, if that happens to be an area that you have difficulty with, the restoration of that confidence will be there, because even your next level mind knows. Your next level mind probably even knows the day. Do you see that? But your conscious mind has blocked it, and your computer has accepted the blockage of your conscious mind. And it's like sometimes you just give up because the battle seems there are too many negatives to deal with. So if you just think that it's simply a task, it's simply a task of a programmer, and every negative program that is in there, I have to erase and replace with a positive. I have to do it repetitiously enough, and believe it or not, when you do it enough, it's going to come back to you, and you're going to once again see, or maybe for the first time, see what real belief is. Because your belief long time ago won't have had the strength behind it that this will have. It will be knowing. That's right. It won't be belief. Belief is kind of hope. And where knowing
It'll
is
be
simply...
a way. It'll be just your way, just like the human ways were natural to you up until now. And they will become the way that you do things. And you will have dropped all of the little human characteristics, and then it's place programmed next level ways into your program, into your computer.
Right.
Go ahead.
The last 3 days I began learning how to use Playbook. And I kept getting sidetracked because as I was learning the functions and putting in the software, typing in the commands, I kept thinking how it was like our computers. And I just go off on these tangents. Of course, now it's clear what was happening to me. But in some of the parallels, like when you were talking about making your programming concise and clear, and how they've got a button that you push. If you make a mistake, you can push a button to find that mistake.
I need to interrupt now. Okay, I need to interrupt you because you're giving us an example, and that's not the next level way. Okay, keep this understanding inside of you, and it will be better for you. Now, if you have a question, we'll let you ask it, and we will try to answer it.
Otherwise, you can just enjoy how that experience related to this. Yeah.
The thing of it is, see, if we let you do this, then you are programming your inner mind in the wrong way, and you wouldn't do that in the next level. Let's say an older member comes up and gives you a lesson, and it opens a door to something like what we gave you opened the door.
And you're programming your inner mind to permit things.
You know, and you start telling him or her, whatever it is, what you were telling us just then, and they don't really care.
No, in the next level, it isn't appropriate.
It isn't appropriate.
When an older member tells you something, you don't come back with, that reminds me of an experience that this really brings home. They don't care for that kind of conversation. So by stopping you now, we're helping you program your inner mind to not do that type of conduct. If you accept...
Okay, you understand?
Okay.
Okay, and this can be a good lesson for everybody.
Is there a good number of particular things to try and program, like say in the course of a 15 or 20-minute meditation? I could easily just spend all 20 minutes trying to program that first thing that you gave us as the most. But I know sometimes my mind will try. It wants to cover so much territory, and I just sometimes...
Well, I think right now you ought to limit yourself to the things that we have talked about.
Well, see, you don't have to give any explanation. You just say, I'm going to do this. I am going to... I can follow procedure to the letter. I can keep my eyes off. I can keep my inner mind. No, how can I say that? Being attracted to vehicles. In other words, you don't have to elaborate on everything. It shouldn't take you but a few minutes to go through all those things. The more times you go over it, the better it is. And if you had 20 things on the list, you read them in a meditative way, and once you memorize them, and you can sit there and keep your conscious mind completely unaware of what you're doing.
Quiet.
And just go over it and over and over, just as quickly as you can do the mantras. But you don't go into explanations.
One thing we've got to update here, in case there's confusion, is the brain is not really the computer. The brain is kind of like a trunk that energy goes through, and the brain primarily serves the conscious mind, and the conscious mind is not the computer. In other words, if I touch a flame and I feel a sense of something, then that goes to my brain, and my brain translates it for my conscious mind. Do you follow that? The brain translates it so that I then explain to myself what it was that happened. I got my finger too close to the fire, and the fire can burn my flesh. But the brain is not the computer. The inner mind is the computer. The brain is simply another organ that can be used as a tool for the computer. Do you understand that? In other words, the brain is what makes your hands move when they need to move, but it's primarily a tool of the conscious mind.
But the inner mind makes...
The inner mind is the big computer that keeps the brain healthy and keeps the brain able to function in that way, at least as far as its programming is concerned. It may not be programmed to keep it healthy very long, depending upon the genetic programming of the computer.
Appropriate to sit down and go to the meditations that you've given us, and then add this maybe at the end, because at the end, by then we may be more in a right state of mind.
Well, it is true that T said a few minutes ago that as soon as you get into a good meditative state of mind where you're not going to hear distractions and that you're calm and that you're not listening, that you wouldn't be receptive to wishy-washy thoughts, that you're in a good state of mind then to feed your computer. And I think T was saying, if I understand it right, that this information now is more important to do during your meditations than anything else. You're just using the normal routine of meditation to get you in a proper frame of mind to do this. Now, you would still, depending upon your particular need, if you still need to do certain healing meditations because of certain difficulties of your own vehicle, but also learn that you can, in that meditation, go into your inner mind and tell that that inner mind to go to that particular part of if you don't question it, if you believe it, it'll work. If you don't, you almost do harm because you confuse the computer and it doesn't know what to do with it. But if you believe that this works, you can go to that inner mind and say, go to that organ and tell it exactly what to do, and in a matter of hours or days, it can do just about almost anything.
It only takes a second to tell it, like you start functioning properly.
You can even program it to do repeated treatments. Say, do that every 3 hours now, every other day. What I have just done, the instruction that I have just given you, and the procedure that I have directed you through on that particular organ, now do that every 3 hours, every other day for the next 2 weeks. Or you can, and it'll do it. It'll follow those directions if you do it clearly and precisely, without letting doubt or question to the effectiveness come in.
Bill's watch starts chiming at 5 o'clock every day. And it's programmed to do that. Now, you can program your inner mind to do exactly that. You can program your inner mind to perform procedures exactly the way they have been designed for you. You can program yourself to remember to put the robe on at a certain time. You can, whatever you have a weakness in, you can program yourself to do it, and it will do it. But if in the process you program, in the process of programming your inner mind, and your conscious mind comes in and says, well, you know, you've always had trouble remembering to do things, then you are confusing your inner mind.
You're
so what
weakening.
you have to do when you begin to feel the fumes of what your conscious mind is going to say, that is if your conscious mind is awake. I'm just saying if it is awake at the time you're programming your vehicle, then you will, if you begin to feel the fumes of when this negative feeling that your mind is going to come in and say a negative thought, then if you block it out, when you begin to feel the fumes or smell the fumes of it, then it will never enter your mind.
If you can't successfully block it out at the moment, it'd be better that you quit. And that you program when you don't have interference to fight with.
Now what you can do during the day when you're not in meditation, you can go over all of these things in your mind. Just over and over and over in your conscious mind. you're not really programming your computer. You're more or less trying to reprogram your conscious mind. But it won't stick until you get it you won't really believe it until you get it into the computer.
With belief. If you get it into the computer with belief, and you get it in accurately and clearly, briefly, concisely, and you mint it, and you don't feed it other things to take away from it, then it's a tremendous help to you. It can just do all kinds of things for you.
And you will be tested about your belief. Let's use the lab, for instance. Let's say that I can't think of anything right now, but let's say that you have worked very hard to follow the procedure to the letter. Let's use the rolls, for instance. Let's say that you tried to mix the dough just right, and you had them rise, and then you put the dough in the refrigerator because it wasn't time to shake it. And then you agreed that you would come back at a certain time to shake the rolls. But let's say you all three got busy doing something and forgot about it. And you come quickly and you try to make them rise real fast so that Tea and Dough won't know that you forgot that you didn't get them in on time. But those rolls won't rise properly, just like children. They won't behave just exactly the way you'd like for them to. Now, but yet you try to convince Tea and Dough, oh, the rolls are great. You know, it turned out just right. And so you show them to Tea and Dough, and they say, I'm sorry, they're not right. And then you can come in and say, well, we can't ever do anything right. Because even though you know that you didn't do it totally from the beginning right, you can still have a negative thought come in and say, no matter how hard we try, we can't do it right. I don't know what Tea and Dough are trying to want us to get, what kind of end result. Now, if you let that thought come in, then you're confusing your computer, especially when you have put into
that sounds pretty convincing to your computer.
Oh, I can't ever do anything right. But what you want to do is be totally honest and say, it was because we didn't allow enough time for those rolls. Tea and Dough are right. They are right in saying they are not right because we did not allow enough time. You're being totally honest, and that way you're putting into your computer truth and not a negative thought. You're being so honest that your inner mind will accept it.
Very easily. Very easily.
Very easily. And you're putting into your inner mind good programs. And but each time you allow a negative thought to come in, you are taking away from your positive program. And believe it or not, the positive ends up being more trouble than the negative ends up being more trouble than the positive. It really throws kinks. It's just like trying to put something into a program that just trying to make a piece of a puzzle fit that doesn't belong there.
Right. If you have,
but it hangs in there anyway.
Yeah, or if you've made an experiment. Let's say you've made a cake and you have an ingredient that doesn't belong. You know, it just really louses up the cake. You've got to almost start over. I don't know how you would get that ingredient out of that cake after you mixed it in so thoroughly. But Gody had a question.
We've had thousands and thousands of instructions which we've put in the book, and we've tried to learn them and live by them. But they've all been on the conscious level until we started this meditation. And my question is those book instructions, we haven't been programming our computer, it's been more of a conscious level, brain type programming?
Well, it was supposed to be in the program. But it is.
The thing I don't like about your comment is the thousands and thousands,
That's
because
like a negative thing right there.
first of all, the basic instructions are not many. The basic procedures are not many. All the others are instructions that if you had the basic ones right, they would have gone automatically.
The branches.
If you would recognize that the basic procedures and instructions that we give you, if you did them to the letter, that the branches of all the other instructions that are related to them, you would do automatically. If you always used a check partner, if you always did the thing as we gave it to you to do, the instruction, like if we said, don't buy those apples if they aren't any good, and you learn what we mean when we say good apple, then you've narrowed it down to see it precisely for what it is. The basic instructions aren't that many. The others are just instructions that if you didn't get the basic ones down good. In other words, to me, for you to say thousands and thousands of instructions, sounds like you didn't get the basic ones right. Because I can't mess up on thousands of instructions if I have the basic ones right.
I'd like to ask Lagodi, you tell us, do you feel like you programmed your interlude with procedures? Now think about it.
I'm not really sure I can understand it. We put teaspoon of salt in this an instruction in the book, or those are the many instructions I'm talking about.
No, you're talking about experiments. You're talking about experiments, but you're not talking about procedures. Now, understand
procedure,
that
like is to follow the recipe. You can't really say that a procedure is putting so much salt in because that's a side. That's part of following the recipe.
Okay, whenever you have an experiment to do, you have a procedure, right? What is the procedure? Tell me the procedure of what you do when you have an experiment to do.
You get out the recipe card and follow the recipe and have a check partner and according to the procedure, which is a recipe card.
Okay, what else? Can somebody else?
Well, you get out all the tools beforehand, and as you use them, put them aside, and
all
these
the
basic
ingredients.
Yes, make sure you double check all the ingredients. When you put them all in, go back to the recipe card and go through the list and make sure you have it all in
Okay, now that's a procedure. Now can you not
Now that is
see?
a procedure. All that you just gave us is a procedure for the lab in our minds.
Now that can apply to Fiber Lab, that can apply to Impro Lab, that can apply to Vital Signs. Can it not? Because that is a procedure that you would do.
If I think of all those as separate procedures, I'm going to get so cluttered and so confused in my mind that I'm going to forget them. But if I have implanted all those as a lab procedure, getting out all the tools, the check partner, the recipe card, the ingredients, so forth, if I consider that a procedure of the lab, and that a procedure is not in motion unless all of those things are done, then I'm not nearly as cluttered.
Let me ask you something. Do you think that you can do an experiment with very good results without going through that procedure? Okay. Then you have sent to your computer, your internet. If you can go through that process from the very beginning exactly the way the procedure has been set down, then you have stamped it on your computer.
See, the thing is, you've got to recognize that there are certain things that your conscious mind can't do very well, that your inner mind can do very well to assist your conscious mind. Like your conscious mind is not a good alarm clock, nor a good foresight, or a good reminder. But your inner mind is an excellent alarm clock, reminder and element to help you have foresight, or a reminder of foresight. If you recognize the things that, like we told you, that your inner mind can make no decisions, can have no reasoning power, and has no judgments, that those are things of the conscious mind. But your inner mind can follow orders. It can, anything that is fed it, if the feeder adopted as truth what it fed it, then it can precisely follow orders and assist you in almost any way. And if you would keep that separate, then you can see how the inner mind can help you. Now, what we're teaching you is to understand the parts of your tools better, of the physical tools that you have, or the mental tools that you have. We said the brain is not your computer, the inner mind is, and yet the inner mind houses itself mostly in the brain. You see what I'm saying? But it is not the brain, though it occupies part of the brain. But you don't want to think of the brain, because the brain doesn't have that capacity. You can't talk to the brain and do it, but you can use terminology like thinking in terms of the inner mind, and once you recognize what the inner mind can do, and that it is that mind that has kept all those systems going, and that it has accepted the programming genetically, it has accepted the programming of the conscious mind. Once you understand all that, then you can begin to know how to type more clearly commands in than you have typed them in before, because you haven't understood that much the separation of what different parts of yourself can perform. Do you understand that?
Let me ask you something. Have you recently said to yourself, I can only do a certain percent of the things right, I can't get everything right? Have you said that?
Did I say that? Yes.
Okay. Well, you have programmed your inner mind on that.
To accept that.
And you have to change it.
And as long as you have programmed it, it will see it's serving you by seeing to that you're right. In other words, you gave it that command that I cannot do more than X percentage, and so it very carefully sorts it out and sees to it that you can't do more than X percentage of whatever you accepted.
And at this time, it is your teacher's place to see when you're not programming your vehicle correctly. Even though we haven't used that terminology up until now. We have used it lots of times of programming your computers, but not with this understanding. Let's use astrology, for instance. If you know about an aspect that occurs in your chart, and let's take Saturn, for instance. When Saturn hits a certain spot in somebody's chart, it weighs real heavily on the person, and they feel like they have the world on their shoulders, and they feel depressed, and no matter how hard they try, they can't just get their head